Welcome back. Yesterday we talked about how fulfilling life can be when raising goats.
And it is, but like any animal, there is work involved in caring for your goats.
Today we are going to dive right in and talk about the day-to-day care involved in raising goats.
When first adding goats, or even thinking about adding goats to your homestead, you are probably filled with questions.
Like, do I have enough time? And what are the costs involved?
What do I need to do to keep my goats happy and healthy?
Caring for your goats is so fun, and it doesn't need to be viewed as a chore. I mean, there are things that you need to get on the calendar and do regularly. And one of those things is trimming their hooves. They just have to have their hooves trimmed regularly. If they're not, there is serious consequences like hoof rot and hoof scald and things that you just could completely avoid if you kept up on top of it. So that is something that is a part of raising goats. And yet, it's not a big deal when it's done properly and when it's done on a regular basis.
When we first brought our goats home, we lived in a subdivision. It wasn't a farm, there were no fences, there was no barns, there was no nothing. And our goats ended up in a garage in a box from Tractor Supply, which worked well for the first couple of years. But when we moved to our current location, which is 9 acres, we had some old barns, we had some stuff we could reuse, but most of it we had to put up from scratch. And it can cost a good deal of money to get started with goats if you are starting completely from scratch, but there are ways to make it cost less. For instance, you can see my main barn behind me is made almost entirely from pallets. It's 10 by 10, it fits 5-6 goats or more very comfortably, and it cost us hardly anything. The roof and the siding, which was rough sawed lumber, was about the only thing we had to put into it because the pallets were completely free. And it's held up for 70+ years and it is still going strong, and there's no signs of rot, no signs of nothing, and we get a lot of rain. We also decided to use electric fencing, which is a whole lot cheaper than using wire, goat wire, and we could fence in an entire pasture without hiring out help because we can easily pound in T-posts and we can string the electric, and it's really easy. So even my children, who were, the oldest was 10 at the time, helped put together the fence. We did use woven goat wire in a lot of areas, but it was a lot less. We could do a much bigger pasture using the electric fencing. So we were able to reduce the costs of our goats at the startup by a lot by using these recycled and less expensive materials.
If you are planning on raising your goats for milk, then milking will be something that is required for daily goat care. I was so excited when I first got goats to learn how to milk. I was also terrified. I was so worried that I would give my goats mastitis. I have heard horror stories about mastitis and the horrible things it can do to a poor goat's udder. Fortunately, milking is not that complicated. And if you follow the proper techniques that we have laid out in the Raising Goats for Beginners course, you can prevent your goat from getting mastitis. Not only will we show you how to milk your goat, but we will teach you how to prevent them from getting mastitis. This way you can enjoy delicious goat milk as well as have a healthy doe.
Up here in Montana, we really have to think ahead when it comes to feeding our animals. In the spring and summer, we have a hayfield that's a grass alfalfa mix, a hayfield that our goats have been grazing, and so we haven't been supplementing with any hay. And that has been a really nice for our setup, but that doesn't mean we don't need to get hay, because winter is always coming. And in the winter, there is absolutely nothing green growing. We have to supplement with hay. And so that's something that is just, it's a necessary thing that every summer we are hauling hay for all of our animals. But for our goats, we have to have a hay pile stacked. So that is a big project that we have to save for, and that we have to plan several days to go and get the hay and get it stacked into the barn to be ready for that. But when it comes to the middle of of December, of January, and the never-ending winter, we are always so glad that we have our hay stacked and ready for our goats.
Breeding season is an exciting time on any goat farm. It's the promise of a new life, of fresh milk in the spring, and everything else that comes with kidding and raising goats. But it's a hard time for your goats. It takes a lot out of your bucks when they go in rut, and it takes a lot out of your does when they are trying to grow 2 or 3 kids. But you have to make sure that they have all the nutrition they need, that they have extra hay and extra grain. You have to make sure they're not deficient in things like copper or selenium that can cause reproductive issues and malnourished kids or weak kids or even stillborn kids. We've been lucky that we have always had easy kidding seasons and easy breeding seasons. But this is Felix. He was one of our bottle babies last year, and he thinks he's a person. He's part of the family. But kidding and breeding, they may be the scariest part for new red goat owners, but they shouldn't be. Because really, as long as you know everything that your goats need, you'll be fine. And that's what the Raising Goats for Beginners e-course is all about. We give you the support to care for your goats with confidence.
When I first got my goats, I was very excited. I could not wait to bring home my bouncing little adorable baby goats. But then I realized that there was so much more involved. The day-to-day care that I needed to learn to care for these goats was extremely important. Things that I had never even considered doing. Things like learning how to weigh my goat so that I could give it the proper supplements and medication. These were all extremely important, and I started to get a little nervous as I realized that I didn't know how to do any of these things. And I started researching and reading and trying to learn as much as I could. I started meeting people and trying to meet people that owned goats and to learn as much as I possibly could. But that is what we are here for. In the Raising Goats for Beginners e-course, we are here to share with you all of the things that we have spent years researching and learning. We don't want you to feel the fear or the worry that we did when we first started. We want to help you learn how to do things such as weigh your goat, or give your goat supplements and things that they need. These things, they seem difficult at first, but with practice and with time, you will come to realize that the day-to-day care of your goats is not only something that is relatively easy, but something that you enjoy doing. And we want to be there to walk you through every step of that journey.
So as you can see, raising goats isn't quite like raising just a cat or a dog.
But with the right knowledge, you will be an expert in no time.
There is one thing that we haven't talked about yet, and it may just be your biggest fear of all.
What if your goats get sick? How do you keep them healthy in the first place?
And that is exactly what we will talk about in tomorrow's video.
But for now, what are some questions or concerns that you have about caring for goats? Leave us a comment below and let us know.